Thank you all for joining us again and welcome back to The Explorer. You know, here we talk geostrategic partnership on how Africa continues to navigate these complex relationships that it finds itself. These are amazing times across the region, going back to a awful lot of other very important geostrategic conversations that's going on globally, and Africa is beginning to find its feet, looking for all options. More importantly, Africa is hosting for the first time a global event talking about the G20, but this is not sitting well with one of Africa's geostrategic partner, who is bent to an extent to ensure that the country of South Africa continues to be in the limelight. Like we all know, like I said in previous episode, Mr. Donald Trump's administration previously said they will not be attending the G20. Of course, there are some delegations that are being sent there, talking from the embassy and a whole lot of other very important strategic interactions that's going on. But make no mistake, the South Africans at the moment are observing very closely a recent comment by the press secretary of the United States of America's White House, maybe alienating a number of South African officials.
The New York Times is reporting that the administration is now sending a U.S. official to the G20. They are sending Mark Dillard. Can you confirm if that is true, and then also explain the shift in?
I'd be happy to explain, because there is not a shift. The United States is not participating in official talks at the G20 in South Africa. I saw the South African president running his mouth a little bit against the United States and the president of the United States earlier today, and that language is not appreciated by the president or his team. The ambassador or the representative of the embassy in South Africa is simply there to recognize that the United States will be the host of the G20. They are receiving that send-off at the end of the event. They are not there to participate in official talks, despite what the South African president is falsely claiming.
Like I said, these two countries are pushing each other back and forth, not just with the current Trump administration. It goes back to the administration of former President Mr. Joe Biden. Geopolitics is a strategic game, and African countries, especially South Africa at the moment, must pay closer attention in regards to this relationship. Now, going back to the G20, I think the South African officials at the moment, and a lot of African officials and experts, are observing very closely. The White House press secretary, Karoline Leavitt, came out and spoke in a way that was never received properly in the country of South Africa, as she said something which, according to global experts, was a condescending way to basically refer to a country head of state. She was referring to the comments that Mr. Ramaphosa, the president of South Africa, was talking from the diplomatic perspective that they are in some kind of receiving some communication with regards to United States participating or not. And the president was expressing, of course, from the strategic point of view, that they will wish the United States of America attend this very important summit. But again, that part failed. But from the approach of the press secretary of the White House, saying that the president of South Africa was running his mouth, I think that's not sitting well in the country of South Africa. So geopolitics should have some limits in some areas. Of course, people can speak out, no worries about that. But again, South Africans will not tolerate that to an extent. But again, they're beginning to recognize that it's freedom of speech, the communication, but to refer to the president of the country that's running the mouth, I think it's not sitting well at the moment in South Africa's own official. So this is what Mr. Ramaphosa was referring to when he was making such a comment that earlier Karoline Leavitt referred to as the president of a country running his mouth. Let's play the clip.
We have received notice from the United States, a notice which we are still in discussions with them over, about a change of mind about participating in one shape, form, or other in the summit. So the discussions are still ongoing. This comes really at the late hour before the summit begins.
South Africa, a strategic African nation that with regards to economic development, despite the difficulties and challenges that South Africa has at the moment, is the largest United States of America's trading partner in the continent of Africa. And that's not going to be changing anytime soon. So there should be a way to work out, like the foreign secretary or the foreign minister of the country of South Africa, Mr. Lamola, just said that the world cannot stand firm or still because of the United States of America not attending the G20. Of course, this is clear. Some countries, leaders who did not attend for certain reasons. But again, the United States of America, a strategic partner of South Africa, which others will question if this relationship, it was what was once before. But again, it goes continuously deteriorating at the moment. However, as we continue to look how South Africa embraces this part, South Africa is toning down. Go back to Vincent Mangwenya, South Africa's own particular spokesperson to the government, came out to look into this, and then journalists posed questions to him. Mr. Mangwenya was basically more toned down. Of course, the country of South Africa understands and saw that particular video. But again, it goes back to what we've been saying, that South Africa, to an extent, despite its strategic diversity in terms of its geopolitical engagement, it still sees the United States as a very influential partner in this global economy. Let's play this clip.
Of course, with us here in the studio is the presidential spokesperson and advisor to the president, Vincent Mangwenya. Thanks very much for joining us. As you can see on our screen, breaking news: U.S. barred from the closing ceremony. What can you tell us?
Well, Vuyo, as you know, the number of factors that go into hosting an enormous summit and event of this nature. And one of the requirements is that all delegations are accredited well in advance. Where there are courtesies to be extended, provision must be made well in advance. And to have a long list of requirements or courtesies to be extended to an embassy delegation at the 11th hour, as you will imagine, that will be difficult to coordinate. And so no one has been barred from attending the summit. We've received mixed signals coming from the US. From the time President Trump said he was not coming, to the Vice President coming to attend, we received his advance team. It received a great deal of cooperation with respect to what will be required from a logistical and security point of view. And then at the very last minute, a few days before the summit, we were then informed about a boycott. Officials that were already here were pulled out. So as you can imagine, whatever resources that had been set aside to support the presence of a US delegation, those resources were shifted. And so I think any reasonable person will understand South Africa's position in this regard, and US embassy officials will also have to do their own reflection in terms of the manner in which the US has carried itself around this process. The president kept on saying boycott politics doesn't work. It's not constructive. It doesn't contribute to any meaningful engagement or advancement of issues. And so what we're not going to get ourselves into is to be distracted and be taken away from a very important moment this morning, where we managed, even ahead of the start of the summit, to get a unanimous approval, resounding approval and ratification of the summit declaration. And obviously our excitement is not only with the adoption of the declaration, it's with the substance that's contained in the declaration in terms of what it means for our country, for the African continent, and the broader global south and the rest of the world, which is a responsibility that the president, as he articulated in his speech, we've taken with a great deal of care, a great deal of dignity, and recognizing the importance of multilateralism and the importance of our own responsibility to the world.
Yeah.
These are challenging times across the region. So for Mr. Trump not attending the G20, it's something that, according to other experts, because the South Africans will have to hand it over to the United States of America. And Mr. Trump being in South Africa, that was what Mr. Ramaphosa was hoping, that he should be in South Africa. But not being there, again, things have to move forward. So South Africa is not going to be crying over what the United States of America understand that it is global role. So the United States have pulled out from a number of global institutions, like South African Foreign Minister just said. And again, we understand that this relationship, like I said, goes back to a whole lot of other things that South Africa has done based on its own diplomatic credentials. South Africa has continued to look into the issues regards to Israel and the country of Palestine. And more importantly, South Africa's relationship with the country of Russia. Again, considering that South Africa is a major player in BRICS, more importantly, we've seen South Africa lambasted with tariffs. We've seen a whole lot of issues. The United States of American secretaries, parliamentarians, or you call them senators, or whatever you want to term the lawmakers, have come over and over and questioned South Africa's own foreign policy. But more importantly, things nosedive. Not just going to Simon Town, not just talking about a whole lot of other issues, talking about the Russian-Ukrainian war, but it comes back to the current leadership, Mr. Donald Trump's own administration, that has singled out South Africa in a whole lot of areas. Make no mistake, Mr. Trump may be making some point because South Africa has its own internal challenges and difficulties. But again, talking about the genocidal issues and the rest, that's not sitting well with regards to global media that have done some in-depth reporting with regards to this, but saying that South Africa does not have challenges. That's not true. It does have its own internal issue. But again, they consider this, that if geopolitical issues are being channeled to internal matters, that's where the question is. So this relationship, according to Mr. Donald Trump not attending, Mr. Marco Rubio not attending, it does not mean that the United States at all is not in South Africa. We do have some low-weight officials who are currently in South Africa to figure out, but again, the transition needs to take place. But South Africa has made it clear that it does have its own sovereignty to protect and is open to working with the United States of America, with China, the Russians, European partners, including African emerging economies.
I want to ask you about what fears, the fears that you may have, given the fact that you're going to hand over the baton to the United States, and to what extent that may just undo whatever has been done over the past year. But before I ask you that, or you answer that question, I'm curious though as to, speaking of how the U.S. carries itself, common courtesies, that particular response by the lady who's the spokesperson of President Trump, where she was saying they saw the South African president running his mouth. Did you take particular umbrage?
Karoline Leavitt, the White House press
secretary?
No,
we noted that, when that comment was made, Voyo, our adrenaline levels were on a high. What day was it again? Was it day before yesterday?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so we were now dealing with the sort of last minute finer details of this summit. Anything that we could identify as risky or wrong was being corrected. Last night around midnight, the president was here doing his final walkabout, ensuring that everything is in place. And so we noted that it was an unfortunate comment, but we're not going to dignify such indignity. That's not how we carry ourselves. That's not how this president carries himself. It's certainly something I will never say about any head of state. The president will not allow me to even think of saying something like that.
Yeah, I think one of the analysts said, I think it's a discussion our colleague Simon Marks had with someone, and he said this is typically the way in America you would chastise a child. You'd say, don't run your mouth. But neither here nor there. As you say, the president moved along swiftly, didn't really engage with what was a comment that was quite shocking to many people. But I want to talk about how the US's dealings with the G20, the South Africa G20, has been labeled as obstructionist, Mr. Magwenya. Where does this now put, especially given the events of now the past 48 hours and the back and forth between who will take over the baton from the US, where does this put South Africa-US relations?
So maybe let's deal with that characterization of being an obstructionist. And one has to try and be balanced here, regardless of how difficult that may be. Because throughout the year, there were US delegations that were participating in the various G20 processes. They were participating in good faith, they were participating meaningfully, and so to characterize political actions coming out of Washington and use them to paint in a single brush the entire US efforts, in our view, will be somewhat a little bit unfair. Our belief is that towards the end of the process, we had this political approach adopted in Washington, which then diminished what has been a constructive engagement with the US, with the entire G20 process. And so that cannot be necessarily, discounted. Certainly what the Trump administration, or particularly President Trump, decided towards the end of the process was not helpful. We would have preferred to have had him here, or to have had Vice President Vance here participating like all other heads of states and government. That was not to be. Going forward, we're going to be part of the troika with the US.
It is about to escalate again with regards to this particular relationship. Like I said, South Africa and the United States of America are strategic partners, whether you like it or not. In my last research, I saw billions of US dollars being passed between these two countries in terms of trade, investment, thousands of United States of American companies into the country of South Africa, and South Africa export tons of products to the United States of America. Despite the complete death of AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which has affected a number of countries across the region. But South Africa still is a pivotal and a landing spot for most American companies. So the United States need to live with this, because the G20 is the first being held in the continent of Africa. South Africa is making it clear that it's up to the task to host such global events. Let me know in the comment section what you think in regards to the comments by the White House press secretary, if that is the way you're going to be addressing a situation in this case, if the United States of America should tone down to an extent, but more importantly, African countries are observing the relationship between the country of the United States and South Africa. For now, I will be looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Smash the like button and have a good day. Bye-bye.